Well, so now we will go ahead and take a look at reactions following the Supreme Court ruling on the Imo governorship elections. Markwe.
Well, some people say the fourth shall be the first, and they're wondering how people are reacting to that. This morning we have with us Theodore Ekechi, who is a director and was also a member, Election Planning Committee and Monitoring Directorate of the Presidential Campaign Council in 2015 and 2019. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here.
And you're also from Imo State.
Sure, I am.
So how did this hit you?
Well, let me say, not necessarily me. I think the way it hit me is actually going to be the way it hit everybody who is from Imo State. The struggle in Imo State in 2019 is a struggle between the people and the former governor, who wanted to install a son-in-law by all means in the state. Like we normally say in Imo State, it was like seeking for the third term by proxy. So everybody in Imo State, most people in Imo State, let me be a little bit frugal, was against that idea and did not want that to happen. Never wanted that precedent to be set in Imo State, in Igbo land, and indeed in the Nigerian politics. So every governorship candidate, except Rocha's own candidate, worked towards ensuring that Rocha's son-in-law did not become the governor in Imo State. So to the extent that that had been concluded yesterday, to the extent that this struggle had been consummated, to the extent that this had been consolidated, that Rocha's son-in-law did not become the governor of Imo State, neither did any of Rocha's proxy become the governor of Imo State, I am very relieved. I am very happy. Not necessarily because I am of APC, but more because I'm a lover of democracy. Yeah, but I'm a lover of due diligence.
By that premise, you one would say that people should have been content if when Ihedioha was on the seat, because I mean he is a member of the PDP, not affiliated to the APC in any way. In other words, quite a substantial membership of your party, if you say that this was the feeling amongst them, would have been content that, you know, former Governor Ihedioha was on the seat.
Well, that would be asking for too much. Ihedioha belongs to PDP.
That's what I'm saying.
We belong to APC.
Yes.
We belong to APC, and there is no doubt that there is a struggle between APC and PDP in power. I mean, for the custodian of power in the state and in Nigeria.
So that's what I'm wondering.
Ultimately,
yes.
What I'm trying to say, ultimately, as long as the ultimate interest of the people is served, as long as ultimate interest of the people is served, it does not really matter too much which party is in charge in Imo State.
That is an interesting perspective.
Very interesting perspective.
The point I was trying to make when I asked you that question about how did this hit you, of all the outcomes you saw coming, did you see this one coming? Oh,
of course, I saw it coming. And let me say once again, I'm not trying to exonerate anybody.
You saw it coming?
I saw it coming. Because at the election 2019, at the approach the election 2019, you have to consider the activities, the precedent, the controversy that trailed the nomination of Hope Uzodinma as against Uche Nwosu in APC. You can see the kind of objection and the kind of opposition that we experienced even within our own party, where our governor was a member of the party. He opposed the nomination of the party to the extent that even when the national chairman came to the state to campaign for our governorship candidate, he never gave him a breathing space. We were allowed to stay in the sun. So the calculations was that Hope was the biggest problem of Rocha Sokorocha in 2019. And so all efforts to ensure that the son-in-law becomes the governor were geared towards stopping Hope Uzodinma. So if you look at the petition by Hope Uzodinma was not contesting the result of Ihedioha. He was not contesting the result of Ararume. He wasn't even contesting the result of Uche Nwosu, who is the governor's preferred candidate. Hope is saying, give me that which belonged to me. Give me that which I earned. Give me that which was truncated. Give me those results that were disallowed just to ensure that I do not become the governor of Imo State. So he was a target. So naturally, we knew that if justice was going to be done, and we knew justice would eventually be done, those votes that were denied him, if added to his votes, we were very sure that he was going to become the governor.
Yeah, but
and when we had the minority judgment of the appeal court, and I hope you follow that, the tribunal, of course, did not agree with him. In the appeal court, there was a split. There was a judge who agreed with him in total, agreed with him completely, that those votes were valid votes and ought to have been added to him. And he was not supposed to be stopped from enjoying the fruits of his labor just on the basis of technicality. So that's just what the Supreme Court did yesterday by saying we agree with that minority verdict, that this man validly earned these votes and they ought to have been added to him. So it was just a way of ensuring that he stopped, APC is stopped in Imo State. It was a way of trying to prove that APC was not strong in Imo State without Rochas Okorocha. That was why he became the target. That was why everything was done possible to ensure that he did not earn enough votes to make him a governor. And I'm not holding brief for anybody, but I can tell you, and you can take to the bank, that Emeka Ihedioha had no hand in the predicament of Hope Uzodinma that was actually validated yesterday.
The reason I asked you that question, I think it's very important to set this clear, was that, one would have thought that if you say that anybody but the successor of, or the son-in-law of the former governor, Rochas Okorocha, then perhaps the APC should have been content that Emeka Ihedioha was on the seat.
No, I'm saying that beyond the common interest of the state,
yes,
there's also the common interest of political parties. There's also the common interest of party candidates and their supporters. So, but like I keep insisting, for as long as it will serve the same interest of the people, Imo people are not worried. That's the point I'm making. But don't forget that Emeka Ihedioha has his own personal ambition, and he has his supporters, and he has his followers who actually would prefer that he becomes the governor. We also forget that Hope Uzodinma belongs to a political party, which if I happen to be a part of, we will also wish that our party is in power.
Yeah, okay,
and that's what has actually manifested.
You had faith that when you got to the Supreme Court, that, they most likely would, give him victory. But did you see the unanimous nature of this judgment coming?
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer, but by common sense, simple logic, put one and one together. Election took place in Imo State. Somebody was credited with 96,000 votes or thereabouts. And then there were cancellations, about 388 polling units.
Yeah.
And that 388 polling units that were cancelled was being disputed by the candidate whom presumably came forth. INEC did not have an answer to the reason as to why those results were cancelled. INEC did not provide any evidence to show that those results were properly cancelled. INEC did not provide alternative result sheets to say this is why we cancelled the result. Even the incident forms that should have been in place when results are cancelled were not available. So if you look at the position of INEC, you will see that INEC shot themselves in the leg, or they chew more than they could, they beat more than what they could chew. And it was only a matter of time that as you get higher and higher, where credibility of the judiciary, it's more and more upheld, you will get more and more justice. So, we have precedences. It has happened before. Mechi became a governor by the verdict of the Supreme Court, even after he had lost at the two lower levels. We have precedences. Even our own Oshomole here in Labour Party became a governor of Edo State through the verdict of the Supreme Court. So it is not an APC administration phenomenon. It has happened severally.
Let's quickly go to Lagos now and take some questions.
I'm looking at the response from the PDP, and, it's quite lengthy, and I'll just take some parts of it. This is what the PDP has to say, and I'd like you to respond to the PDP, saying that, the PDP, according to this quote from Kola Logbadio, says, the PDP and indeed most Nigerians are still at a loss as to understand the basis upon which the Supreme Court arrived at this decision. Goes on to say the PDP finds it difficult to understand how Senator Uzodinma of the APC, who came fourth in the March 9, 2019 governorship election, and they put out the vote, suddenly has emerged the winner. And they say that they feel that this candidate who has been declared winner does not have the blessing of the Imo people. So how do you respond to that?
Well, the PDP publicity secretary is not from Imo State, and I don't think he's familiar with Imo politics. He's not familiar with the dynamics of Imo politics. And with all due respect to him, I do not think he is qualified to pass such a verdict on the thinkings and the sentiments and sentimentalities of the Imo people. What had happened is that so many people had peddled false reports about what is at stake at the court. Many people do not understand that Hope has never contested that Uche Nwosu did not garner the number of votes that were credited to him. Hope never contested that Ararumen never gathered the number of votes that were credited to him. He never contested the votes of Emeka Ihedioha. Hope only complained that the votes that were credited to him was far a shortfall from what is actually due to him. And that is exactly what is at stake. And that is what people don't seem to understand. He is saying that you canceled 388 results in 388 polling units. And these were my strongholds. This is where I hold sway. This is where my votes are supposed to have come from. He argued that it was an orchestrated arrangement to ensure that he did not become the governor. So what the Supreme Court did was actually to look at those 388 polling units and confirm if indeed there were elections within those places, if indeed there were results that were submitted, and if indeed those results are capable of being authenticated. And they agreed that those results are authenticatable, and that is why they declared him. By the time you add the results from the 388 polling units, that gives you about 213,000 votes, to the 96 states, 96,000 votes that were mischievously credited to him by INEC, being prodded by Rochas Okorocha. If you add that, you see that there is a man that has over 300,000 votes that is spread beyond 18 local governments of the state, which meets the constitutional requirement. And so that was the argument it's all about. But many people are more interested in saying, this man came fourth, this man came third, this man came second. They are not looking at the kernel of his petition and the kernel of the matter. I think a son was on television yesterday, and he threw very clear light, lucid light on what the judgment is all about. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to delve so much into the technicalities. But by common sense, logical extension, you can see that this is what actually happened. So what the man in PDP, the publicity secretary, is saying, frankly, I do not really quarrel with him. It's a very difficult pill to swallow, being in government for 8 months and suddenly find yourself not being in charge anymore. It's also very traumatic for a man who thinks that he won an election 8 months ago and had to sit by the side watching until 8 months after when justice came his way. So we have to understand the perspectives and understand the foundations of these arguments before we draw conclusions. But like I said before, the PDP publicity secretary is expected to say something, and he has said something. That's what his job is all about anyway.
Mr. Ihedioha, if I could also ask you, yes, it's a legal question as well, but there are those who think that the Supreme Court in this instance departed from their precedents, which did say previously that if this kind of matters come up, the witness have got to prove the allegation, and then they also have to be at those polling units to ensure that what they're saying is verified. They also say that how come the courts relied on a police officer who was not, evidence from a police officer who was not in those particular polling areas. So ultimately, they think that this is about 2023.
Well, I didn't hear your last word, but I think I got a bit of an idea of what you're trying to say. Once again, let me also put on the record that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal practitioner, but with common sense, common logic, I can attempt your question. Let me start by saying that if you follow this case very well, the police officer that tendered those evidences was not a police officer that was just called by Hope Uzodinma or that just walked into the court to say, I want to tender evidences. It was a police officer that was actually subpoenaed by the court. The tribunal actually subpoenaed the police officer to come and give evidence. That is very, very important. If you follow from that level, look at the basis on which that the judgment of the tribunal was given. It was not on the basis that Hope did not win the election. I think it was more of the fact that the person who tendered ought not to be the person to tender. So that is technical. That does not really address the facts of the results that were not accepted. If you follow the argument again to the appeal court level, At the appeal court, the justices did not really discountenance those results. I think it was also technical on the basis of who tendered what. But there was a dissenting judgment that clearly spells out why those results ought to have been authenticated and accepted. And at the Supreme Court, please, no matter how much you want to talk about the Nigerian judiciary, we have 7 members, 7 justices on the panel, and they returned an unanimous verdict on this matter. And I think for anybody who loves Nigeria, who wants us to continue to thrive in this country on the rule of law, we should have some respect for the judiciary and respect the judgment as final. As a party, we have been so traumatized in Zamfara. You saw how we were embarrassingly ousted from the Zamfara election. We suffered the same thing in Adamawa State. We suffered the same fate in Rivers State. We took them in our stride, and we never got to the point of beginning to question the authority of the judiciary, particularly that of the Supreme Court. The very day Nigerians begin to toy with the authority of the Supreme Court, on that day, I think we are really trying to put our country to shame.
Let me ask you this. I'm concerned about, I'm concerned about, continuity here. The government before the government that has just been removed is an APC government. Now, a PDP government comes into power for 8 months, and the Supreme Court is returning another person from a different party altogether. On the one hand, how are the people taking this? On the other hand, what kind of, how do people relate with this, this kind of thing? Because now the government is likely to go on a completely different tangent from what they have been enjoying over the past, or what, going through over the past 8 months. How do you think the people are going to take this? If you can speak apolitically, it would be really nice.
Yeah, sure, I'm going to speak apolitically. The lessons of the Imo elections 2019 and the build-up to the election 2019, particularly as it concerns the members of the party in APC, is a lesson for the whole country, is a lesson in democracy, is a lesson that will help to deepen our democracy. I just want to take liberty, at the risk of being immodest, to say that I am the one that conveyed the summit that actually declared, where we declared as Imo people that we are going to give Rochas Okorocha a run for his money. We are going to oppose his impunity and ensure that he does not, or he did not, rule Imo State as a personal estate. I was the one that convened that summit in my country home that says that we are going to ensure that the processes and all the paraphernalia of party primaries will be followed and respected to ensure that a credible leader emerges. Now, from what had happened and how we have succeeded and how Ihedioha came to power, I call him the John the Baptist of Hope Uzodinma, and how he came to power, and now how Hope has become the governor of Imo State. The lesson there is for all of us to realize that power is very transient, and to realize that you can never overcome a will of a people who are committed to ensuring that their personal dignity and their personal freedom is respected. So going further, I want to tell you that Hope will be a fool, and he is not one, not to learn from the lessons of what happened to Ihedioha. He will be a fool, and he's not one, not to learn from what happened to Rochas Okorocha. I think he's coming into governance and government with humility. He's going to come with humility, not too much of pride, not too much of ego. And he's going to come into government respecting people who are around him and those who worked hard to ensure that he becomes the governor. He will come into government realizing that he's coming to work for the people and not the people working for him. So what I'm saying in effect is that whatever Emeka had achieved the last 8 months was built on the mistakes of Rochas Okorocha. And I think if you look at what Emeka has done, Emeka took the government to the people. Emeka listened to many people. Emeka consulted widely for the 8 months he was in office. Rochas never did, and rather snubbed everybody and claimed that he had retired all the politicians in Imo State. Hope is coming to learn from wherever Emeka had been criticized for the past 8 months that he was in office. He's going to improve on it. Hope is going to ensure that the government of Imo State is finally taken to the people. I think Emeka started it. And Emeka, from what I have seen on ground, he has done so well, talking about politically. He had done so well. There have been processes. He had tried to bring back the institutions of government into play in Imo State. Hope is going to consolidate on that and take the government closer to the people. I know Hope is a people's person. So you see more of rural engagement in his administration. I don't have any doubt about that. Imo State is going to be better off. What
percentage do you attribute to the divine? Because we cannot rule out one factor that has also come to play in the reactions of the public to this. They talked about Father Mbaka's prophecy. Do you see any role for that in the victory that has been given to Hope Uzodinma?
No, I can make some calculations, some conclusions. I don't see any role that it played in the eventual emergence of Hope Uzodinma. But let me take this as a Catholic. I've always believed in the prophecies of Father Mbaka. And I've always believed that he has a divine mandate to really talk about what God's intentions are for this country. Don't forget, it was the same Father Mbaka who went and prayed for Ihedioha in Government House and make sure that the place was cleansed of any powers or principalities and powers within the Government House. So he couldn't have suddenly, within 8 months, risen against Ihedioha. He was only passing a message that he saw in the spirit, which we ordinary people could not see. So what I think, one of the beneficiaries also of this is that I know that Father Mbaka's Adoration Center is going to be flocked by many politicians now who want to see tomorrow, so that he'll be able to tell them whether they're going to become governors or president or senators. So don't be surprised if you see that place becoming a mecca for politicians in this country.
Well, we'll eventually see how that matter plays. We don't know what... Today is supposed to be the inauguration. Do you have an idea as to where that's going to happen?
Well, let me say that I'm not Hope's spokesman, but let me say that, there is, the nature abhors a vacuum. There cannot be a vacuum in the government and the governance of Imo State. So as soon as all the processes, all the documentations are completed, I know Hope is going to be sworn in the next minute after. And as you can see, all road leads to Imo State. I already hear that there's a traffic jam at the airport for those who are struggling to come back to Imo State. Hope is going to receive the same heroic welcome that he received when Gulak declared him as the authentic governorship candidate for APC in Imo State. It's going to happen.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily. Theodore Ikechi is a director, member, Election Planning Committee and Monitoring Directorate of the Presidential Campaign Council in 2015 and 2019. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.